Uraidla, Uraidla basket range. I sort of connect all and Ashton, those sort of three together, and the other smaller communities as well. But there's a sense of belonging here. I think for me and my children, I'm lucky that two of them live very close, and the third one is up here often. Um, and involvement, I've been involved since I've been here, and I think the secret um, to a community is how you involve yourself in it, and therefore, um, meet new people, contribute, and get back from the community as well. Hi, my name's Peter Geers, Petros Ioannis Maria Geers to be correct. That was my baptismal name when I was born in Holland. I left there when I was 4 and went to West Australia for a while, but been here since 1980. Started barracking for the Crows in about 1984, so that means I was a South Australian. Um, yeah, I love it here. It's I live in a beautiful place. Have some beautiful friends, and I have a great community where there's lots of involvement. And I try and be involved as much as I can, or as much as I've got time to. You might ask why I'm here. I came here chasing a woman, as you do. I thought I was coming over for a holiday, and whatever it was, that was so 50 years later, I'm still here and love it. We first lived in Basket Range, where Delma, my partner, was born. When we first came here to see the house, we looked down the valley and put an offer in on the place, and then went home and said, "What does the house look like?" And we couldn't think of couldn't think of the floor plan, and I'm usually fairly good with that, so we had to come back and have another look to see if we'd all fit in. This was just a very small house then, and in the meantime, we had 3 children. They went to Basket Range Primary School. We had a fair bit to do with the school, and the various committees that were set up there. We used to have about 50 or 60 kids. There's a few less now, but when we moved here, the place was pretty overgrown, and there wasn't the flat space that's around the house now. It's a wonder what bulldozers can do, and we've created a fair bit of our own personality into the house and into the garden, and double the size of the houses as the kids grew and so on. And they're now off my hands. But 2 of them live here, live very close. There's 5 grandchildren, which is a joy to see them as often as I do. And one lives in town, but he comes up here quite often as well. So, the whole family's a bit invested. And Delma was a Cranwell, and say no more, because the Cranwells have been here forever. I think when my boys went to Basket Range Primary School, they were 4th or 5th generation Cranwells at the school. Yeah, I was 4 years old. I had my 4th birthday on the boat on the way here, so I'd like to put on record that I'm a boat person. And we arrived in Sydney, and there was no work. In Melbourne, there was no work, so Dad didn't get off the boat. Adelaide, no work. Got to Perth, and they said, "You've got to get off now because there's nowhere else to go." The boat was called the SS Waterman. Came from Holland, obviously. And Mum and Dad were so brave, I think. This was in 1952 we came, and to go to the other end of the world with very limited English. Mind you, I think, would have been pretty hard living through the war, and they got married at the end of the war. And they had some horrible memories of war episodes that we learnt a bit about as we were growing up, but they didn't really talk about it too much. Anyway, my memories of Holland were very minimal. Building a snowman once, climbing under a fence. yeah, 4 years old. I think that I think if I'd stayed there, I would have cemented memories and had memories of that early childhood, but I don't. Coming here, we went and lived in tents and Nissen huts in a town called Northam, which is about 60 kilometres inland of Perth, where all the migrants went. Mum and Dad were only allowed to bring £20 out, which is the equivalent of $40 then, with 3 kids, and a huge enclosed container, not containers like they are now. It was a wooden one, framed up, which had a bed in it, and cans of every sort of food you can ever think of were stuffed in with the packaging. All our belongings were in that and in cases. Dad was a greengrocer back in Holland, but didn't have the opportunity to do that here. His English wasn't that good. We went to live in a little town called Muntargem, which was the edge of the wheat belt. And I can remember one day looking up into a tree, and I said to Dad, "Look at that, how green's that tree?" Because it was very dry, it's marginal, very marginal. He picked up a rock and threw it into the tree, and hundreds of parrots just arose, and suddenly the tree was bare again. So that was an interesting story. So we moved up to Perth, lived in Fremantle, a place called Palmyra, and I went to school there, Christian Brothers College, then Teachers College, and then taught down in Bustleton, and we played a lot of sport and drank a lot and had a lot of parties. And then I think I'd been there for 3 or 4 years and went transferred to Perth, worked there for a year, and then went overseas and lived overseas for 3 years. I went to Holland for a while, went to England for a while, travelled a lot, lived on the Greek islands for what seems like to me now a long time, but probably 6 or 8 weeks at a time on each island. Slept on top of the Acropolis at one time. You couldn't do that now. The Greek islands were fantastic. We lived on the beach in bamboo huts that we assembled and got jam tins and cooked in them, and went up to the local bars and drank lots of Ritsina. Got invited, the longer you were there, the more you were accepted, and got invited by locals into some of the country festivals and so on, and they're good memories. And the second time I was there, I was with Delma. We met Delma when I went back to England as my partner for 45, 46 years. And met her there, and we travelled a heap. We went up to the Midnight Sun, went to the fjords and just hitched everywhere those days. Yeah, we just hitched right through Europe. And then we went back and worked in Holland. I worked in a company called Brownzeel, which was I'll never forget it. I was putting hinges on doors. It was one of the first places that had mass-produced furniture, and I was just, the conveyor belt, and you just pick up another screw and put a screw in the hinge. If you missed any, the next person was supposed to get them. Anyway, that was me. Delma worked in a pencil factory, again run by the same company. They made pencils and packed them. Went to Amsterdam, where there were some cousins living, and stayed with them. A lot of those places have got bike sheds down the bottom. We threw all the stuff out of there and made a bed up from just a mattress, and I think we were there for about 6 months. She was a chambermaid and I was a porter in the hotels. That was a big convention, or still is, I suppose, but that was one of the first convention areas, I reckon. Schiphol Airport used to have planes coming in, just flying in all the time. The relatives, who I'd never met and never knew much about until I asked Mum and Dad before I left, who am I going to go and see if I go over there? We'd get the occasional... Our mum used to get letters, but, they're over there and I'm over here and I'm trying to be Australian, because back in those days, the 50s and 60s, was a real cultural cringe, and all I wanted to do in Australia was eat lettuce and, you know, meat pies. I didn't want mashed potatoes and gravy and gehakteballa, which Mum made, and, you know, I just wanted what the other kids were having for lunch. Anyway, I got to Holland and they'd hired a hall, probably the size of Basket Range Hall, I suppose, and about 100 people turned up, and just me, you know, to see these 100 people. It was pretty amazing. But as soon as I walked in there and started, and my Dutch was pretty rudimentary. A lot of the young people meaning people my age, had learned English at school and Spanish and French and whatever, but not the older ones. So I had trouble communicating with my mother's generation, but not with my own generation. And I felt at home straight away. It was a really strange feeling, a very, very welcoming feeling. Very, I thought, yep, I could live here, and I did. I lived there I went back to England after that because I was teaching and earning some money. But then, as I said, I lived in this town called Bergen-op-Zoom, which is where down in the south of Holland, where Mum and Dad lived. And most of the rallies still live fairly close. You know, they're much denser living than I was used to as well. And but I never found it claustrophobic. I saw them lots, you know, and I was always invited out to dinners and going out for drinks with them, because we were all early 20s, mid 20s, and it was a big family. I think I had 35 cousins or so. So the families were bigger back in those days. You know, 4 to 6 to 8 wasn't unusual. And I came from a family of 4 boys as well. So that was fantastic, actually, the first time I turned up. So, yeah, I enjoyed my time in Holland. Yeah, we went to the Greek islands. We stayed about 8 weeks, and then we made our way through across the Middle East. And you could still do that then. They can't do it now. And that was pretty hairy at times. Another time we got to the border and we were 12 hours late, so we were taken back, locked in a hotel room. They took our passports. Next morning we had to front up to court. That was pretty scary. That was in Iraq, and that was scary because we didn't have our passports. And then so we went to a court and we couldn't understand a word, and they found us guilty of something. I don't even know what it is, but they said sign here. And we said, well, what are we signing? And some guy who did speak English came over and said, well, you overstayed your welcome. You've got to pay, I think it was $100 fine, which was a lot of money then, and we didn't have a lot. And then you get your passports back. So we didn't have much choice. We could have been signing up to, the fact that we had 10 kilos of hash in our backpacks. But as it turned out, it worked out okay, and we got taken to the border and they said, get out now because you've only got a visa for today. So, so anyway, we went through Afghanistan. I loved Afghanistan. We did a lot of bargaining, and I love bargaining. Pakistan, India, and then came back for a Christmas. Delma came back here, and she came here for a holiday, and she kept saying, I don't know, I'm not sure when I'll come back, maybe next week. I thought, the call to home. When I lived in England, I used to hitch across quite often, don't work on a Friday. I was teaching, but we were all just casual. Hitch over on a Friday, and if we didn't get a lift, you'd crawl under a hedge somewhere and sleep. And then one time Delma was with me, I think. Yeah, she was. and we'd been over to England, and we came back because we knew a lot of people in England by this point too. We were hitching back, and we got dropped off at this spot, and we couldn't. It got too late, and we said, "Oh, we always carried our sleeping bags," and we thought, "Oh, we've got to go to bed." So we saw this fence. I jumped over the fence, Delma threw the stuff over, and then she climbed over the fence, and it was quite a high one, probably 2 metres or so. And woke up the next morning and had a look. We were in a zoo. We were in a zoo. We're lucky we didn't crawl into a cage, into an enclosure. But we were luckily between enclosures, and I can't remember what was there. I remember there were monkeys on one side, and I could hear birds. But we got out of there pretty quickly and got picked up pretty quickly as well. It was a good time. It was a great time, actually. Before kids, you remember? I love having the kids, and I'm not denigrating that at all. It's just that I had a life before kids. We didn't start having children until I think I was 38, 39 before I had my first one. Delma was a couple of years younger, 37. So I was about 42 when the third one came along, Seb. Delma must have been 40, yeah. So, yeah, they don't realise that you have a life before that, so, but that's okay too.
Peter, I'm going to have my work cut out.
Yeah, I know.
Figure out.
Just leave all that out.
No, there's so much good stuff in there.
I was talking to somebody this morning, actually, who said she's a bus driver for an aged care facility, not this one. Cindy Say, do you know Cindy? Oh, anyway. And she said she loves it. She said they've got such rich life histories, all these people, and they're sitting in, and nobody knows about it. And every week she hears something new about somebody's life history. And I said, yeah, well, you've got that too, Cindy. I know some of the things she's done. And I said, and I've got it too, but, it's all going to be lost somewhere along the line. It doesn't matter, but, yeah, everybody's got a life history. So have you, your history before you came here. For me, it's all about connections. So if you make connections, and you keep making connections, that sort of branches out, and then one of the people that you've made connections with made lots of other connections, and that seems to have happened here. But it doesn't happen unless you try and unless you're part of it. That's what I always think and say to people. And so when somebody says, do you want to do something? You say, sure. You don't say, oh, I'll think about it. You say, sure. And I can remember once when the kids were at Basket Range Primary School, and we had a busy bee, and not many people didn't look like many people were turning up, and Delma and I are going, bloody hell, it's their school as well. And then we sat down and thought, well, if you're going to give, you've got to give without complaining, without taking, or without saying somebody else is not giving as much as me. No, you can't do that. So all you've got to do is say, oh, I'm prepared to do this. And sometimes if you step into that space, somebody else goes, oh, well, they're doing it. So instead of being negative, it becomes a positive. So you step into a space and somebody who you know pretty well steps in with you, and then somebody they know steps in. And I learnt a lot at the Basket Range Primary School in that way, that the more you give, the more you get back anyway, So, yeah, we just use that as a bit of a motto. Not that we didn't complain sometimes, but, not goody two-shoes, but that was how we tried to organise our lives, that if you get involved, somebody else will, and if they don't, well, that's their choice and you can't do anything about it. Then the kids wanted to play cricket, so I coached them for cricket with Don. Don was a good mentor at that point, Don Cranwell. And not that I knew anything about cricket, but, they're kids, so that's what you do. So through the cricket club, we became involved in a different part of the community. When we moved here, we did the same. and then I got into land care, and so that gave us another group of people. My partner Delma got cancer in 2018, I think it was 2017, and we were really struggling, and a group of friends, really good friends, just came every 3 or 4 weeks, and they just did the garden. And they went down, and I still had the veggies and all that stuff, but they just come down. They'd clean it. They wouldn't come inside. They'd go home. They'd spend a couple of hours here, and that was just that just showed how they regarded Delma and what we were going through, which was terrible. And then when Delma eventually died, I thought, we can keep doing this. And I said to them, let's do it for each other at each other's place. And so that's how the garden group started. And then a few of us thought, well, we could also do it around the place, That's how the Guerrilla Gardeners started. And so there's, I don't know, anything between 5 and 10 of us that do that on a Monday. And we just find a spot, as you know, and that we think where stuff needs doing, and we just started working at community places, and we've done work at Basket Range Hall, the Ashton Hall, the Nature Education Centre. We've done some work for Tanya there. Got a half a dozen spots here in Uraidla that we do, the creek and next to the hall and so on. And all of these places just need a bit of TLC, and well, unless somebody does it, it doesn't get it. So, yeah, I like it because you see your friends more often, and people come past and they go, oh, this is growing well, it looks much better than it used to. Yeah, thanks, that's good. You can join us if you like. Oh, no. Oh, some people, no. So it's good, and I've met some other people through that too. We often have drinks in the garden down here in the summer or in the spring and summer, and people from those groups come and we share a meal and we share a bottle of wine, and it's just nice, So and it's just a good life. That's what I call it, a good life. Yeah, I get guilty. I feel guilty because we built stuff over a period of 50 or 60 years, and then, she's not around to enjoy the fruits of our labour. So that part of it that makes me sad, and sad that she's not here, and sad that my kids haven't got their mother. She was a different person than me and had lots of qualities that I don't have. So the kids would have benefited from that. I think it's hard living by yourself when you've been with somebody else for 50, 60 years, 50. So, yeah, I don't enjoy life as much as I did when she was around, because you have somebody to share it with now. You come home, there's nobody here, and it's also very nice. I'm not complaining. I'm alive. It's a beautiful day. I've got great friends. I'm in a great community. I'm very involved, and I love everything I do. But it could have been different, and it's not. But it's not. So to wish it otherwise is not a tangible. Yeah, it's not something that's ever going to be realistic, a reality. So, yeah.
What's it like having grandkids?
Yeah, it's wonderful. When Hugo was born, I think I was the first one into the hospital. I didn't beat Josh, obviously, but I was pretty close. And when Tilly was born, it was the same. They were shocked that I got there so quickly. I was teaching, I can remember that. And Seb rang and said that the baby was born, and I had a free lesson, so I was in there, and so yeah, and so that was lovely, and it's always been lovely. I've got 5 of them, and 4 girls and a boy. They come, and every time they see me, they give me a hug, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. And they'll do it if I walk into their school, or if I'm walking down the road, and they'll yell out and run across and give me a hug. That's, you can't buy that. You can't buy love, and yeah, I love them dearly, and I think they love me dearly. And I love seeing them, and I'd see them a lot. I'd see them 2 or 3 times a week, which is great, 3, maybe more. I can remember that Imagine Uraidla meeting when all those people turned up, and Mel and Jamie and Benno got the shock of their lives that so many people turned up. But we did the old butcher paper thing, what would you like for your community? And Imagine Uraidla then started off as the instigator of those activities and pushed them and promoted them, and brought other people on board, obviously. The sustainability fair was going then, but and Richard started that, and I was involved at the beginning of that too. So there was a bit of community aspect to the place, or quite a bit, and probably more than most communities, but the Imagine Uraidla just focused it. And as soon as you started getting newsletters, you got to know what was happening around the place. But the thing, it's a bit like giving something a name. If you've got an illness and you don't feel well, and you go to the doctor and he says, well, that's what it is, and you go, oh, good, like it gives you a sense of security, I suppose. That there's something there, and Imagine Uraidla, instead of disappearing, it stayed. And then we had another meeting the year later, and then people from the council started coming because they could see that it was a useful thing. And yeah, I mean, all credit to those 3 who just said, we've got to do something about this, because this place is fire a gun on a Sunday morning and you can't hit anybody now. Yeah, and it did help that those other things like the pub opened up, and the Lost in a Forest and so on, the cafes. But yeah, the momentum was driven by those 3 people originally. Now, friends of mine in Western Australia read the Imagine Uraidla newsletter and send me emails saying, oh, it's so good, oh, you guys are doing this, or you guys are doing that. And it's a model that I know Jess has spoken to some other towns, or town reps have come to talk to her. And that's what I said before, you've got to learn when to step back, and those people knew when to step back, Jamie and Mel and Benno, and let the next lot take it on, and that's good. Imagine Uraidla now is a facilitator rather than a driver of things. It still does drive a bit, but yeah, it's a credible entity now. Whereas when it started, it was a think tank. I like the way the IU's working now, because they have a lot of young people working with them as well. So you're setting an example for them, and that's good. You have to be careful, because people like me and my generation have to step back, have to learn to step back, not just step back, but have to learn to step back, because you get some places where somebody's been in that position for so long that it's an ownership thing, and then nobody else is invited along with it. I don't think that's happening now. Thank you. That was longer than 45 seconds. Once a teacher, always a teacher. You can't stop. Can't stop talking. You can turn it off now. Well, that's another thing, I think, that in teaching, I think if you're going to be a good teacher, and I tried to be, you've got to get to know the kids, and that's as soon as you start moving into their circle, rather than them expecting them to know who you are, you have to know who they are. And as soon as you do that, you get a sense of you know, they value you and you value them. So it's all part of the same thing, isn't it? There's no, yeah, you got to involve yourself, and then it's good. Then it's all good. Yeah, that's enough, isn't it?
Perfect.
I can't stop talking. Good luck with the editing. Thank you, Aaron.
Well, it's 7:30.
We've missed dinner.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, no worries.
That was perfect.